showing a lot of interest in actually building the equipment to be able to see over the curvature of time-space so that they could see into the future and somewhat into the past, but basically the future.
Okay. So there's also our Henry Deacon contact said there was a black box that came on one of the crafts. And I don't know if you're familiar with that black box. Did you have exposure to that as well?
Yeah,
so
it was something that we called the cube or the yellow disc or yellow cube, yes.
Okay, but then that was not a looking glass. Was that a looking glass?
That is a variant of the technology.
Okay.
However, whilst the looking glass shows probabilities, or has shown probabilities, the cube would react with the people present. So there was an alteration, if you will, over what you were seeing from it. It would actually spin out as a yellow disc out of the top of it, where the word yellow book originally came from. Yeah. And depending upon what predispositions, kind of like little Yoda telling young Luke, you bring in there what you have with you. You know, whatever is in there is what you bring. You could then change the perspective, the tilt, if you will, the orientation or angle of the information being presented back to you. So unless you are well prepared to deal with such a thing, human interaction and human emotions bring instability of the provenance of the information.
Okay, that's what went on with the black box, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, but with the looking
and
glass...
I used that to our advantage at the T9, because that, in fact, was present at the T9, and I projected certain information which caused a little upset during the meeting, and they got certain abductions removed and Lotus removed off the calendar and things like that. I caused some real trouble, in other words.
Can you elaborate? Are you willing to elaborate?
Let me sit here and consider what I should and should not. During the negotiations for the Tau 9-6, I was asked to supply a model for the Lotus. In fact, Marcia and I were both asked because they knew tangentially she was involved. I agreed to do so, which is what you respond when you're a sworn operative. It's yes. Unless there are great objections. I was then taken to the location where the treaty was actually being negotiated. Give a short recitation as to the nature of Lotus. What was happening is the P-45Ks used Lotus. They wanted to use Lotus for the back engineering of their own neurological problem. I was objecting to its use, but still was under orders to provide a model. I was prepared to do so, but I was also allowed to show them probable outcomes. So, in fact, the yellow book, the cube, was used for that purpose. Shockingly, they happened to see themselves standing on the bones of their own families and things like that in the vision, and they ultimately decided to remove Lotus as well as certain abductions from the Tau 9 Treaty. So we were successful in getting certain things removed. I think I can safely mention at this time, because we're only one OF9 and one Tau 9 Treaty away from the passage through the completion of the passage through the galactic plane. So I think I'm pretty well safe to go ahead and mention it now. They're not going to be able to get it back, put on the treaties and all of that in the time that we have left. In other words, they got outfoxed. And that's what happens when you're negotiating in treaties.
So you use the capacity of the yellow book or little black box to show them the future implications of what using the Lotus to amplify or to rectify their own biological problems?
This is true, and that was skewed by, it takes a great deal of emotion to skew the imagery and the audio that comes with it. But I'll just say that I'm extremely vehement with regard to my objection for the Lotus being used, and apparently that vehemence was sufficient to skew the image enough to get them to jump back aghast and in horror. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, okay. And this kind of like, just for the sake of the audience to some degree, you have seen in, I guess, the Yellow Book or in the Looking Glass, and you can correct me which one it is, the future of Lotus, in a sense. How Lotus becomes, once it's brought to the fore by you.
Well, actually, no.
No?
No, I haven't. The reports to me which came concerning the future of Lotus, which we're not going to get into in depth this evening, was given to me as information.
Oh, so you didn't see it?
Personally see it, no.
Okay.
I was told.
I see.
I was told. That was during the early years, I say the early years of Lotus. It's only been going on for 6 years now.
Right.
But this was the latter half of 2001. And this was a quid pro quo for them to get certain information from that Kaela showed me. I demanded certain information back, and actually it was information concerning the time travel issue, because they were still trying to be, they were still reticent about informing me as to what the real nature of the situation was, as late as 2001. Meaning
the real situation was, meaning how much access to Stargate, to time travel that they actually had?
Right, the whole treaty system, the situations involving the treaties, their outcomes, the actual potential for both timeline number 1 and timeline number 2 outcomes. In the case that we're in right now, we seem to be in a variant of timeline 1, and that's good. For everything that I've seen and have read and reported to me concerning timeline number 1, it's not happening exactly the way that they figured that it would. But then again, it couldn't, because we've made changes along the way, which diverted us away from timeline number 2. And in so doing, our future, again, I regard our future as something which is pretty much a blank slate. We're writing it for ourselves. And so we are now seeing something coming to pass which is slightly different than the prognostication, than the probabilities that we were seeing. And I'm good with what we're seeing so far, but we are still faced with the challenges, the environmental degradation, etc.
Okay.
But hopefully we will rise to the challenge.
Okay, so this is interesting, because it sounds like Kaela was instrumental in getting you to have greater access to intelligence about what the Looking Glass was telling MJ-12.
Yeah, it was the information that he was providing me which provoked questions. And the fact that they didn't even want to get into long-winded discussions with me in the late 90s concerning what he even was. After we had argued for years to find out even where the material was coming from, then we were finally given access to the material. I mean, this went on for a few years.
Okay, but your interaction with Kaela was leading you one way and giving you one set of information, and MJ-12 then had another set. Isn't that right?
Well, they weren't really. It wasn't that they had another set of information. He was telling me. He did tell me basically what was going on.
Okay.
And they were simply not providing that information as what they considered a need-to-know situation.
I see. So
they just weren't going to tell me what they didn't feel I needed to know.
But little did they, well, this is my paraphrase, but little did they know that Kaela was basically cluing you in.
He was cluing me in, and he was informing me his perspectives concerning the treaties. I knew something was going on. And that is ultimately what they wanted to know about. And I said, well, for you to know about that kind of thing, then I need to know about certain other things. It was truly a quid pro quo situation. And they said, well, okay, we'll tell you if you tell us. Right. So I told them, and they told me a little more.
Wonderful.
And it was right around that same time that Lotus was actually kicking into fore. The May 31st, 2001 event that took my project and basically threw it in the garbage can, and it turned into what it is now, this project that it is now. And as a result, I also found out from them where they said Lotus was ultimately destined. And that is, like I said, we'll discuss that in